Woken up a happy man this morning. I mean, knowing that that yellow flag incident yesterday didn't cost him, as Peter just told us. Obviously, he did go on the following lap to set fastest time, so the point is slightly moot. But Barrichello's got the edge. But don't forget, 2 weeks ago in Spain, he had that disastrous start. Didn't even make the start. The car dying on him on the grid there, and Ferrari will have worked very hard. They were testing on 3 different tracks in the last week to get the car absolutely rock solid. Again, it's still a brand new car. It's only raced in 3 races, and Barrichello hoping that his luck finally comes good. 2 years is a long time in motor racing not to have a win.
I wonder what would have happened yesterday if Jarno Trulli hadn't blown up in such spectacular fashion and caused that 10-minute delay and also a fair amount of confusion out on the track. Here he is anyway, talking now to Nick Damon.
Yeah, no, truly no real luck in qualifying yesterday after your engine went. You're starting in 16th. Where should the team be? Where should you be qualified?
Well, honestly, we've been struggling all weekend, so we didn't expect much more. Obviously, 16 is a bad position for the grid, but I'm sure we can do better for the race.
So what work were you doing this morning?
Just to check the car balance and confirm that it's okay, because in a way we've been working a lot through the weekend without finding any extra performance on the car.
Is it anything to do with the engine having problems with this high altitude?
Not really. I mean, the problem I have had on the engine yesterday is nothing to do with anything special. It's just reliability. We know that we are not good yet, and we are working very hard. Even because yesterday engine was new, only a few hundred kilometers. So,
like having a better day today. Thanks, Ollie.
So turn up when we talk to a Renault driver and ask what's gone wrong. I mean, they are been the most consistent team on the grid thus far this season.
They have, but at least he's being honest, because a lot of teams could have used the smoke screen of the Renault blow-up yesterday to make excuses for all kinds of trouble. And he was honest. He said, the engine blew, we were off the pace anyway, and that's the result. Button 13th, Trulli 16th. But they are the fastest starters on the grid, and that's why it's going to be so exciting a bit later on when you see how quickly they try and leapfrog and cause all sorts of excitement in the midfield.
We saw Michael Schumacher just a moment ago. Damon said the best way to beat them is to go faster than them.
It's the only way to beat them.
Well, but that sounds obvious, but do what Rubens did yesterday, because it really rattles them and sometimes they can't compete. Michael couldn't come back yesterday, could he? Can he come back today? Michael
is not a good loser. He's a born leader, a born winner, and when he does anything apart from win, he gets in a sulk. And you could see him. He put on about 3 or 4 minutes of good grace, and then he started looking like a wet weekend in Bognor Regis.
What, he used to live in Bognor Regis?
Well, there you go. And what he has won this race, which Michael Schumacher hasn't. So there we go. What he's got one up on Shui. But he's third on the grid. Let's not get all upset, because he's third on the grid, which for a lot of drivers would be a very, very good result. For him, it's a disaster. It's a bit like Manchester United finishing third in the Premier League this year. It's their worst finish in 11 years, and Schumacher's third here, and suddenly the world is nigh.
Just looking at the gradients of both the pit lane and that straight there, does that have any effect on the cars as they go into the first corner?
Yeah, I mean, as they any rise and fall in the track does make a difference on the loadings on the car, because as you go up and down, it does compress and lift the car a little bit. Also, it has effect on the body as well. I mean, the lateral G-forces around here on some of the corners are really quite enormous. T6, corner 6, which is between the Niki Lauda curve and the Gerhard Berger curve. It's one of the highest generating G-force corners in the world, and the lateral G is getting up to about 3, so it's 3 times your body weight you're feeling as you go around there, and going up and down as well. If you've driven a car fast on the road, that if you go over a blind crest a little bit too fast, you lose your stomach. Well, you imagine doing that at 200 miles an hour.
I'd love to lose my stomach. Peter Windsor has some fuel news for us now. Peter.
Well, again, more observation than news, but I think if Williams BMW are going to beat Ferrari today, one of the ways they might do it would be by being able to carry more fuel in that first stint. It's a one-stop strategy, as we've said. most of the teams, in fact probably all the teams, will be going well past half distance before they stop, unless somebody takes some sort of outlandish gamble by starting very light, but I don't think it's the case. But much more importantly, the feeling again in the pit lane is that perhaps the Williams can carry more fuel, has a larger fuel tank than the Ferrari, and if they can run crucially 3 or 4 laps more before they make their stop, that might make the difference, particularly given the different tyre choices. Now, warm up here, if Williams are running their full race load, they should be slower appreciably than the Ferraris. It'd be interesting to see what sort of times they do. Having said all that, Ferrari is second guessing that that's what they're going to do, so maybe Williams will run relatively light just to fool everybody. We'll see. Of course, is a left foot braker, tend to use more fuel than right foot brakers. Rubens Barrichello being a very prime example of that. There is a rumour that Rubens is starting to left foot brake, but that he's discounted that. He is still braking with the right foot. I think he and DC are the only 2 drivers that continue to do that. And one of the reasons he's been so quick here is that he's unbelievably fast through turn 1. And he's going in relatively slowly compared with Michael, but he's on the power so beautifully early, and he's got an incredible run out of turn 1. That is really his prime point on the circuit, where he's gaining a lot of advantage. So maybe he's using more fuel just because he's so quick on exit from turn 1. That's anything I can imagine.
Well, traditionally speaking, left foot brakers have the edge, don't they? Because they can keep the on and hit the brake at the same time, whereas you actually have to lift off the power, and if you're using your right foot for both. So on a track like this where braking is so important, interesting that a right foot braker, one of only 2, is actually on pole.
Yeah, but long ago Ferrari compensated for the difference that you've just explained with the damping system, which actually takes into account the delay between coming off the throttle and the brake. So that's not really an issue there. And here you have to say that right foot braking a Ferrari F2002 round Austria doesn't work at all badly. And Rubens doing a beautiful job with his system.
Now, we talked earlier on, and we're seeing all the cars going out very soon on this session. A lot of the teams have some ironing out to do after all the troubles they had during qualifying yesterday. Is that the feeling in the pits this morning, is that even right from the top, from Ferrari down, that there is some ironing out that needs to be done to get the cars absolutely ship-shape for the race?
That's right, yes, but it is an engine circuit here. Engines are a premium, and if the car's reasonably well balanced with reasonable grip and doing what it should be doing, you're going to see a lot of the teams not wanting to put too much mileage on those race engines this morning, because this is a hard circuit on engines. McLaren, for example, Ron Dennis told us after qualifying yesterday that basically, although the performance didn't look that good, it was about where he wanted his cars to be. We have to assume that he's on the soft tyre there, and that's about as quick as they can go.
We were looking at Jacques Villeneuve just now. We've switched to Rubens Barrichello in the pits. But talking about Villeneuve, I mean, Panis really put the wind up Villeneuve yesterday. Is this part of the battle for a seat at BAR next year? Villeneuve's being reported in the press this morning. He'll have to take a £5 million pay cut if he's going to stay at BAR. Panis is a lot cheaper, but he's a lot quicker here as well.
Yes, but I think what we're seeing with Jacques is a typical result of being paid a massive amount of money. I don't think it's done anything to Jacques. In fact, it's probably done the opposite, because he's making a lot of money at the moment. He's very demotivated because the car's not a winning car. He has no sense of direction, no real sense of motivation of where he's going and what he should be doing in the future. That's only my opinion, but he knows he's not going to get the same deal at BAR next year. There's probably nowhere else he can earn massive money, and he probably realises he's not going to have a winning car next year. So what is there for Jacques Villeneuve to do now? It's a difficult situation for him, particularly as the team which he helped to create is now in the hands of David Richards, a very good man, of course, but not Craig Pollock, Jacques' closest friend and buddy and manager and everything else. So the whole context of the team has changed for him as well. So difficult times for Jacques, and soul searching, I would imagine. Does he want to continue at this level of Formula One, driving the way he is? I mean, we'll see.
What else would he do though? He's collected enough CDs to keep half of the music industry in business. He's got his big boat. Can't imagine Jack doing much else.
Well, he's got restaurants. I think he set up his own recording studio when he was going out with Danny Minogue. He's got that down at Monaco. He's got lots of things going on. He seems very good at sort of getting excited about other projects. But basically, Jacques is a racer. He just loves driving racing cars, I think. The problem is, you know, he left Williams. It was his decision to do that and go for the big money. And he walked away from a winning car to a question mark. I think at the time, of course, he believed that the BAR Reynard Honda package or the Supertech package was going to be a winning one, but it wasn't, and you know, he's to some extent paying the price for that now.
Well, Villeneuve's quickest this morning by over a second, so there we go. He's been listening to what we've been saying and pulled his finger out, but realistically a point here, the first point for BAR this year, is looking kind of harsh.
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, they should be scoring points regularly. They've got phenomenal facilities, they've had a brilliant budget behind them, and they should always be in the points, really. I mean, give or take 1 or 2 races. So, yeah, I mean, this circuit's not that difficult, as we said yesterday. If you've got a good engine, good brakes, reasonably good chassis, you drive well, you should be in the points here with a budget like that behind you.
We've been talking about what the drivers are paid. What about the team principals? I mean, obviously they're on a fairly good whack. Nobody publishes what they get paid and whether performance related, and whether if they don't do well they get kicked out, like Niki Lauda we talked about yesterday, whether, you know, really he should have got his act together at Jaguar by now, and there's no excuse there. They should be winning. They shouldn't be in the last 4 places on the grid.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there are so many different aspects to this discussion. I think one of the points that should be made is that if you do well and you perform well and your car's going well, like at the moment, it appears as if Formula One is still in pretty good shape economically, and there is money out there to be found, and you are rewarded for your success. But I think what has changed is that if you don't deliver and you don't have the right package, you don't have the right driver motivation or whatever the problem is, no longer will the money just continue to fall out of the sky and allow you just to continue, you know, qualifying 20th and finishing 15th. That situation will change.
To the real world.
Yeah, and I think a lot of good young guys who are currently running Formula 3000 teams, for example, are waiting in the wings to take over at the back of the grid now. And it'd be nice to see some good talent on the grid in terms of management and getting the job done in a leaner, meaner way.
So we've still got Villeneuve quickest this morning, Ralph and Michael second and third. Salo's not doing too badly either. He's up in 6th. The Toyotas are really looking pretty strong here. I mean, a chance at another point for them here, do you reckon?
Absolutely, yeah, they've done a great job, and I think they are the benchmark around which we should judge teams like BAR and Jaguar, as you mentioned. They're doing a great job out of the box with a basically simple package, but everybody's motivated and working in the right direction. There's a great feeling in that team. As I said earlier, Alan McNish is on the harder tyre, Mika Salo's on the softer tyre, and unfortunately we have to keep talking about tyres because they are an issue here. The soft tyre, both the Bridgestone, is pretty marginal in terms of what it does after 20-30 laps. There is a graining problem, and so the drivers that have chosen the harder tyre are starting to feel a little bit better on race day.
Peter, what's your news on the pit stop situation? Is everybody on a one-stopper?
Yeah, I mean, if you go down and ask the teams what they're doing, they'll all say wait and see, so one has to guess all this. But basically, this circuit is a one-stop circuit. The car companies have come here with products that reflect that. If anybody's going to try and do anything different, i.e. a 2-stop or a 3-stop, then, you know, it's just going to be because at the back and they're going to do something different and see what happens. But, yeah, it looks like a one-stop strategy. The big question mark, as I said before, is just a bit of radio.
Earlier, if it's worse, you stay out.
So the big question is when they will stop, who can run longest before they come in for fuel.
Peter, we're on board now with DC. Now, he's been reported saying overnight that he's virtually written off this season. That's hardly shock news, but not good news for British fans.
Well, I mean, that's a classic quote taken out of context, and I cannot imagine there was any stage where DC have said, I'm riding off this season. I mean, obviously, having won Grand Prix and been very near to winning World Championships, DC, at the start of the season, believed that he had a similar chance. The car isn't that sort of car, but I'm sure he's not sitting around thinking, I've written off the season. He's still trying to get the best in the car, and he's going to win races this year, I'm sure. He's very highly motivated. And this whole thing about what is DC's future, all the rest of it. I mean, just like everybody else, it's the same driver that Rubens Barrichello has been for the last 18 months. It's just that the car's very good now. And DC, if the McLaren does improve, and I'm sure it will, then we'll see DC right at the front again.
We're watching Michael going very fast indeed, Peter. He has a point to prove if no one else does today.
Sorry, I missed the beginning of that question.
Michael going very fast. We're still watching the pictures. He's just gone fastest so far today. He, of all people, has a point to prove.
That's right, yes. If nothing, to confuse his opposition, that's the first point probably to prove. But secondly, if he is on the same tyres as Rubens, yes, you know, he'll be wanting to get the car right, and maybe he might be running a little bit less fuel than Rubens this morning, just because he wants to get whatever problem it was solved, to see if they have solved that problem. Ross Brawn hinted that there was some sort of braking drama going on, and we saw Rubens Barrichello had an incident on Friday when the gears apparently locked as he went into a corner, or something happened, locked the back end. Blocked was the word he used. So maybe it was related to that, in which case Michael, we want to make sure there was no repetition of that.
And we've got Irvine, second quickest this morning. I mean, there's nothing really to read in it. He could be running on a toothpick full of fuel, but the Jaguar team needs some good news, and even if they are going to start, 20th, 21st, you know, Irvine to get a quick time in this morning, although he's just been deposed by Barrichello and now Michael, who's second.
Yeah, I don't think we should read anything at all into Jacques and Irvine being quick at the beginning of this session. Doesn't really mean anything. They may be running very light fuel. They may be the only guys going quickly on the circuit at the moment, but we'll see what happens in the race. That's much more important.
Would Michael put a lot of stock, Peter, by being fastest in the warm-up, just psychologically?
Sorry, I missed that again, Matt.
Would Michael put a lot of stock by being fastest in this session because he wasn't in qualifying? He might like to get one in psychologically today.
Yeah, I think if it's a psychological thing, the only psychological reason for doing that would be that he is on the harder tyre, and now he wants to emphasise the fact that he wants everyone to believe he's on the softer tyre by going really, really quickly this morning, just to add more confusion. If he's on the same tyres as Rubens, if he's on the same compound as Rubens, then I don't think, you know, whether Michael's first or second has any bearing on anything in this morning's time settings.
Peter, just one point that's very pertinent. Is Rubens going to be allowed to win this one? If Michael's behind him, will he be allowed to win, or will he have to step aside as he did last year and bow to the almighty German?
Now, I would say, without any doubt at all, if Ferrari are running 1-2, if Ferrari are running 2, if there's a Williams or any other car in there, this won't come into play at all. But if they're running 1-2 and they're clearly ahead of their opposition and they can play around and Rubens is in front, absolutely for sure he will be asked to let Michael win. That will not change until Michael secured his 5th World Championship. After that, I'm sure Michael will look after Rubens and help Rubens win as many races as possible. And I think this year it's a different Rubens in that sense. I think he'll let Michael pass in a very discreet way, and he'll be very calm about it afterwards.
It's an interesting conundrum that you've got racing drivers who by nature are very aggressive, very competitive, yet Rubens has to bow to Michael at every junction. Now, I mean, obviously he's paid handsomely for bowing to Michael, but it must really get in his gut that every time he gets a chance at winning a race, he has to move aside and let Shui win.
Yeah, but Rubens is bright enough that he drives for the only team in the pit lane, to know that he drives for the only team in the pit lane which is dominated by a driver, i.e. Michael Schumacher. He's not driving for Ferrari, he's driving for Michael Schumacher's Ferrari team as it is orientated around Michael, and he knew that the minute he signed the contract. He's not a number 2, but then he's not a number 1 either. His job is to work within the Michael Schumacher Ferrari team, and that's why he's doing what he's doing. It's still the second best driver in Formula 1 in my view.
Well, he's running second at the moment. Michael is quickest, and Massa's up to third. So again, more shine from the youngster. He's not far off a podium place, I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, it was great seeing Massa after qualifying yesterday. He was really, really disappointed with himself because he was only 7th. He said he made a slight mistake on a quick corner, a bit too much oversteer. I mean, most guys would say, wow, you know, I'm 7th in my first season of Formula 1 here in Austria. And he also had flu yesterday. He wasn't feeling too bright. He left the circuit early, went to bed early. So, you know, he's a star, no question.
But then again, I mean, when
Or was he 9th? 7th or 9th?
When greats come into motorsport, we know it right from the beginning. I mean, when Senna came in, when Schumacher came in, when all the greatest names in Formula 1 came into the sport, we knew it instantly.
Yeah, Massa, he just looks so natural in the way he walks around the paddock, let alone he drives in the race car. Nothing is too much trouble. He's not any pressure at all. The interesting thing, I guess it shows the passing of time, is that somebody asked Massa, or in fact I asked Massa, who his hero had been as a kid, and he said, oh, Michael Schumacher. And you'd think as a Brazilian he would have said Ayrton Senna, and he said, no, Ayrton was well before my time.
I bet that made you feel good.
Well, I'm actually older than his parents, I can't believe it.
Oh, well, we'll keep that one quiet. That's all that sun you've been getting. It doesn't help the aging process. But actually, it was interesting. Irvine said last year, about 2 years ago, when Button came into the sport, and when Button sort of showed a few moments of greatness, but then tapered off. He said, "Well, that's it. You know whether a driver's good or not." And he wrote off Button instantly. But then maybe Irvine is not the one to talk about who's great and who's not.
No, I mean, Eddie has said some quite funny things recently, hasn't he? I mean, he's been going on about how he must be the second best driver in the world, blah, blah, blah. Be interested to know what he really thinks about Rubens right now. He probably thinks, oh, well, Rubens is on the soft tyre and, you know, didn't mean anything. But, you know, deep down, even Eddie, I guess, would have to admit that Rubens is doing a pretty good job right now. In fact, doing the best job that anybody in the pit lane could do for Michael Schumacher. And, as I said, I mean, occasions recently when Rubens' sensitivity and his ability as a test driver has helped the team enormously. And just to give you one small example, on Friday Rubens came in here in Austria and said the engine just doesn't feel right, and all the telemetry showed that everything was perfect. And they took the airbox off and found that his tear off had gone down into the airbox and was just sitting there, and it just changed the engine note slightly. It wasn't disturbing anything. And you know, he's a pretty sensitive guy.
We've had Ralph off the track. That's no surprise. We had cars off left centre yesterday, but is that because they're still on a very green track this morning, or is there enough rubber still down from yesterday?
Well, I don't know what happened to Ralph, so we can't make a judgment about that. But generally speaking, I think quite a lot of people are going off here because they know they can come back on again. It's an incredible runoff system they have. Doesn't seem to stop the cars at all. And I think we see a lot of drivers perhaps taking more risks than they would normally take because you can get away with it here.
Yeah, they're going to get a bit of a wake-up call in 2 weeks' time when they're so close to the barrier they can lean out and sign it.
That's right.
Got pictures.
Ferrari as it's pulled up next to us. A lot of smoke coming off the front brakes, nothing to get worried about, but quite unusual to see that on a Ferrari. More common on the Williams BMWs. David Coulthard just pulls up. His front tyres looking very, very worn, but he's probably started the session on old tyres, so again, we shouldn't read too much into that.
Michael had brake problems allegedly yesterday, and that was rear brakes, now front brakes. Should there be a question mark over the Ferrari braking system going into the race?
I don't think so, no. I think we have to find out whether or not Michael really did have braking problems yesterday. It was such a weird post-qualifying session for Ferrari. I mean, I'm just very, very cynical about the whole thing. Cynical is not the right word. I'm intrigued to see what they're really doing, if they have got a problem or not. Brakes are an issue here. It's certainly hard on brakes, so let's hope that there are no braking problems.
Up the pit lane, was he rushing off for a pee, or is he changing cars?
Well, we'll go up and have a look.
As usual, interesting stuff from Peter. Good insight into.
Michael's got a very fast as you can see the spare car here in the middle there. Mechanics are just fettling that and making sure everything's okay, but looks like he's done his run in that, and if he goes out again, it's going to be in the race car, which is over on the far end of the garage. As you can see here in Austria, the garages are relatively small compared with, say, Barcelona, and for teams like Ferrari, McLaren, Williams get used to working in the largest of the garages in the pit lane with a lot of space. This is fairly cluttered, to say the least, but Ferrari still have this great feel to them, and I don't know if Leo, our cameraman, can pick up those graphics they've got right at the back there. Just looking at the screens there, they've got really funky graphics for the two drivers next to their name, and it's just very Italian and great.
Italian and great. Well, as long as they're going fast, they can get away with it. It's all very well to have style, but if you're slow, then style doesn't count for anything. It's also the great thing here about having the garages so small is that you can actually see into them and see what's going on. You know, a lot of these garages are very big and very deep now, and you can't really see what's going on to the cars, but the cars seem virtually almost out into the pit lane here.
Yeah, it's all very cosy. I'm not sure that drivers like and Montoya are that pleased to be so near one another, but yeah, that's all pretty good. But I think for the mechanics it is a bit too cluttered here, and it's quite difficult if you're working on the spare car and a race car simultaneously to have all the room you need.
Now, I understand that Williams have complained that McLaren sent a couple of their mechanics with digital cameras to go and take some pictures, and Ron Dennis said, well, as long as they were wearing uniforms, it wasn't spying. What's your call on this? Espionage is nothing new in Formula One.
That's a difficult call, that. I think we've got to blame the digital camera world, haven't we, for this whole thing. If digital cameras hadn't been invented, I don't think we'd have the barricades we see at the front of all the garages when all the sponsors and the fans are walking up and down the pit lane. But the problem with digital photography is that you can just put it straight into a computer, email it, and you can explode it, expand it, whatever you like, and it is a problem. But I think Ron Dennis has got a good point, actually. I think if they are McLaren guys in uniform, then, you know, Williams are free to chuck them out whenever they want.
And if they're McLaren guys not in uniform, or we start getting onto dodgy ground here?
Well, you know, once a car appears, even at a test, let alone at a race where it's on the grid pretty naked, I mean, it's all bets off then, and I'd be surprised if there's anything on a McLaren that Williams don't really know about. And it was interesting to hear Patrick Head this morning making the point that the integral Ferrari engine gearbox is a myth. Now, you know, I'm sure he's not had a very, very close look at the Ferrari, but he's seen enough to know that they have a separate gearbox and engine, just like all the other teams. And, you know, that's a classic example of an engineer knowing exactly what's going on at another team.
Peter, Ralph's gone off again down at the Gosser curve.
Well, we'll have to see what's going on with Ralph. It's possible that he's running very, very old cars as well, just because he wants to conserve his good sets for the race, but obviously that is only an assumption.
We've got a replay. He lights up the front left and just goes straight on. Doesn't even manage to turn into the corner at all.
Sounds like a lack of grip.
He didn't lock up actually going into the corner. It was a good 100 yards short, locked up the front left and then didn't turn right. Whilst we were talking about espionage and Williams and stuff, what's this about getting a new, smaller, miniature Ferrari-style gearbox?
Well, Williams have got ongoing development programs for every aspect of the car, and they may have a new gearbox in the pipeline, but I don't think it's anything out of the ordinary in terms of their normal schedule. Patrick Head was asked on Friday about so-called new gearboxes appearing, and he said, I know nothing about it at all, and must be something the journalists have contrived.
I'm sure the journalists have got something better to do than contrive stories about gearboxes. There are far more interesting stories to come up with in Formula One than gearboxes. Well,
no, I think the journalistic point was Williams are having to copy the Ferrari system. I think that was the point of the journalists.
Canada seems to be a bit of a turning point. A lot of teams are talking about improved engines, improved bits and pieces for Canada. Why is that likely to be such a pivotal moment in the season?
Well, it's sort of the halfway mark, isn't it? So I think when people talk in March and April about developments, they think in their head, oh, how long is it going to take to do that? And they think, well, halfway through the season. And so they sort of say Canada. I think it's a bit of that. but there is development going on all the time between races. Effectively, Ferrari run 2, if not 3 teams now. Williams and McLaren very similar. They've got a development team, a test team, and the race team. So it's difficult to say at this race something's going to happen. I mean, Jaguar have been saying that for the last couple of races. British Grand Prix, we're going to have the new aero package, and of course now the British Grand Prix is getting nearer, they're saying, oh well, don't expect too much from the aero package, and it's just really part of ongoing development.
Sorry to interrupt, but we were just seeing Ralph coming very, very close to the pit wall as he crossed over the grid. I presume he's trying to clean the line that he will take off the grid later on this afternoon, because he's on the dirty side of the track, isn't he?
That's right, yeah. The big disadvantage of being on the pole or being on that side of the grid is being on the dirty side of the track. Of course, traction control nullifies that problem within itself, but it doesn't nullify it relative to the other side of the grid. So, although you've got a couple of lengths start over the guy next to you, you're losing that on grip up the hill. So, it could be that all 4 cars just go into that first corner dead level.
On virtually every lap when he comes around, we see him dive off to the right over his grid position and then dive back over to the left again. So, and he's setting some very slow times. He's only 17th quickest this morning.
Yeah, as I say, he's probably on a very old set of tyres. Be interesting to see if Rubens does the same.
We haven't noticed Rubens doing that, although he is quickest this morning by almost a second. Montoya's doing exactly the same again. We just got a replay of Montoya heading to the right as well. So both Williamses lined astern on the right-hand side of the grid are on the dirt. Benaldi going well. He's 4th quickest this morning, and he set his best ever grid position in qualifying yesterday. He's going to start 12th on row 6. And the arrow's really looking good. They're getting the new generation Cosworth. There's also talk now about Jordan using the Cosworth next year. Apparently Eddie's been saying good morning a little more frequently to the Cosworth guys than he would do ordinarily.
Jacques Villeneuve saying yesterday that he rather feels that Jordan have been holding BAR back, and he hopes that Honda get on with it and just make them a single team next season.
Well, it's in his interest to say stuff like that, isn't it? This is more political than your average day in the House of Commons. The swings left and right, although there are bigger gaps between the parties in Formula One than there are in British politics. But we won't get into that now. It's a Sunday morning. We won't ruin your bacon and eggs and coffee and orange juice. I'm making myself hungry now.
And Barrichello is making Michael sit behind him.
Yeah, Michael's got nothing to prove this morning, and this talk about trying to outsight Barrichello is all very well. But Michael Schumacher is in red number 1. Everyone knows he's the quickest driver in Formula One, not only now but for almost a generation. And Barrichello knows it. That's why he's number 2. That's why he's paid a relative pittance compared with Michael Schumacher. And well, if he can't be allowed to start first, and if he can't be allowed to set the fastest time in warm-up, and the checker flag comes out at the end of warm-up this morning, and Barrichello's quickest from Michael Schumacher. Massa goes 3rd, Heidfeld is 4th, and Benaldi 5th. Not a very good session for McNish. He's down in 21st, and Salo 20th. Maybe they were running heavier fuel loads because they were very quick in qualifying yesterday. Salo was 10th, and McNish was 14th. We're on board with Michael.
Both Williams high up on the grid, but low down in the standings in warm-up. Is there anything to be read into that?
Well, no, we saw just now the fact that they were swinging over to the right as they came over the grid to clean the line. That's going to have lost them a little bit of time. Peter's analysis is that maybe Ralph was out on very worn tyres, and indeed Montoya's tyres look pretty worn as well. So not necessarily wasting the good tyres for later on. So I'm sure nothing sinister to be read into the Williams tyres this morning. Every team has their own agenda. They go out there to do their own thing, and as long as they've achieved that in the time they have for warm-up, then they'll be happy, and as long as the cars are running well. The only concern we saw was that Michael jumping into the T car again, so some indecision at Ferrari. That smoking front brake, possible brake problems yesterday, maybe more chinks in the Ferrari armour. But Villeneuve quicker than Panis this morning, and it was the other way around in qualifying. But the times today I really wouldn't read a lot into. Ralph gets out. He's got to be happy though to be on the front row of the grid with Rubens this afternoon, which is good stuff. Again, he has to prove more in the Williams team against Montoya. He and Montoya are far more evenly matched than Rubens and Michael Schumacher are. So there is some ground to be made up there. There is a good fight to be had, and they're not the best of mates.
No, and I think Frank Williams likes it that way.
No, he likes it. He's always
it.
liked it like that. Always liked it like that. He likes his drivers. He likes them, some needle between the drivers. If you go way back to Piquet and Reuter, when you go back to those kinds of, periods in racing, the more of the needle between the drivers, generally, the faster they go. But sometimes, when you've got Ferrari, for instance, you've got Michael Schumacher, who's clear number one, and he goes fast enough, regardless who his teammate is. Probably goes faster because his teammate's slower.
Good to see Felipe Massa up there in third place. I saw him this morning having his ready brek and a big glass of milk and some Junior Halib orange, and it certainly does the trick. Well,
clearly he's got a glow on, and that's possibly why the car is the colour it is, either that or the Halib orange. But he's fantastic driver. I just can't wait to see him actually notch up his... The only frustration at the moment, because of Michael's dominance of Formula One, is that those drivers who are coming in and potentially have a chance to get on the grid or even win a race is going to take a little bit longer, or they're going to need to be in a faster car, because it's the top of the sport is blocked at the moment by Ferrari. It's hard for the younger drivers to even get a podium place. But Massa is definitely a man of the future, with or without Michael Schumacher in Formula One, and he'll be around a lot longer than Michael Schumacher will. Interesting though what Peter was saying though about Schumacher being Massa's idol, and that
I fancy being too young to rate Ayrton Senna.
Well, he may be only 21, but Ayrton Senna was around and racing 10 years ago, so it makes you think about whether Massa was actually interested in Formula One as a 10-year-old or even a little bit older. We lost Ayrton Senna in '94. 8 years ago, which is a frightening thought. Temperature already 23 degrees, so potential good news for Michelin, because the hotter it is, the better they go, and Williams will be very, very excited to see the temperature climb. Mind you, so too will McLaren. They need anything they can get at the moment to help the speed in there. And whether DC was taken out of context or not, saying that he'd written off this year, it's always hard for a team to come back from being low down. Generally, you see the teams that are fastest at the start of the season continue to be fastest, and even in fact extend a lead. A lot of it's to do with money, that if the more money you've got, then the more research you can do, the more testing you can do, and the gap between the haves and the have-nots tends to get bigger.
All right.
It's like a hole on the side of the Sauber. I don't know which one it is. We can't see the number there. A lot of cars have been going off, and there's that kitty litter flicks it up. It could easily make a hole in the side of the car, but that's not good news, because if it can make a hole in the side of the car, you don't want it starting to hit drivers' helmets. So track temperature 22 degrees, air temperature is only 16, but the humidity is a lot higher today. It's almost double that of yesterday. Damon will be in a bit later. Interesting to see how he wooed the Michael Schumacher fan club, because not a lot of love lost between the Schuey fans and Damon in his day, but hopefully they cheered him on, and he gave them a suitable headache with his raucous Conrod music last night. The fans not yet out in numbers. Still a few spots in the grandstand. I mean, this is one of the most popular races in Europe. A lot of Germans make the trip south of the border into Austria, and a lot of Austrian race fans who tend to support Mr. Schumacher.
And Fisichella says he rates it as the 4th Italian racetrack. I couldn't work out what he meant by third.
Which is the second. Yeah, well, first and second are easy to work out. I don't know which the third would be, but there we go.
Silverstone.
Possibly. Or Canada. Or anywhere as far away as possible. No, I guess Monaco would be the third Italian racetrack. But I think you're probably pushing the bounds of geography a little bit to call this an Italian racetrack. But definitely one of the most beautiful tracks of the season.
And we're joined now by Olivier Panis. Olivier, what do you reckon to your performance so far this weekend?
Well, to be honest, it's quite very, very positive for me and for the team, definitely, because I work really hard in the test before this Grand Prix, and we find a little bit improvement, and yeah, it's still really positive for this week.
Hey Olivier, it's Jeremy Hart here. You're doing a lot better than Jacques at the moment. Is this a fight for who stays at BAR next year? Is this a personal battle with JV you've got going this weekend?
I don't think so, really, but I mean, I have a big respect for Jacques. We work very well together, and this time I'm really confident in the car. I'm sure all the time the driver want to fight with the teammate, but we have very good relationship. Sometimes I'm front to him, sometimes I'm front to me. This is a good point for the team to continue to push it hard.
Olivier, you were 5th here last year. Would you settle for points again this time round?
Robert, I think so. We have a good strategy for this afternoon.
Thanks for your time, Olivier, and good luck.
Thank you.
He hasn't scored points since last year, you know.
I didn't want to say that.
You're too nice. He and Jacques get on very well.
And about time we had a look back at the highlights of warm-up for the Austrian Grand Prix.